Welcome to Vermontitude, a collaborative effort between Great Eastern Radio, the Brattleboro Reformer, and BCTV to bring you the stories behind the stories on the topics you want to learn more about. Because there's always more, so there'll always be Vermontitude. Hosted by me, Peter Fish Case. Welcome to Vermontitude. New episodes drop every Tuesday and can be found by going to vermontitude.com, reformer.com, brattleboro.tv, and locally on Comcast Channel 1078. We come to you from our studios at the Innovation Box on Flat Street. I'm Peter Fish Case, and each week I cover the topics that are of concern to Windham County and the towns that reside within its borders. Joining Vermontitude today, author, storyteller, expert on the rich-poor gap, wealth inequality, Chuck Collins.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Good to be with you, Pete.
Yeah. Let's get right into it. Well, first of all, I guess I didn't do a proper. I guess you are currently talking about this book as I hold it to the camera to get you your proper thing. Tell us. Let's get into this. It's called "Altering an Erupting Sun." What is that all about?
Well, it's I've written some nonfiction books, kind of boring books about economics, but this is my attempt to move into the space of fiction. And it's basically about Windham County is sort of a character in the book. It's very much place-based. It's here. And it's about one community sort of facing a disrupted future, the ecological impact of climate change. How does it affect Windham County? Looking ahead over 7 years, how do people prepare? At the same time, there's a little bit of historical fiction, too, looking at the social movements that formed the main characters of the book. So it's a book kind of about how do we face the moment we're in. Okay. Yeah. All right. So it's Windham County is a character in it, and we are characters within Windham County. Exactly. So that's great. So this is just out right now. Yep. Just came out this summer. Okay. I've been doing some events around town and around the region, and it's getting well received in that people like a good story, but it's got some sort of thoughtful thematic points about, and it draws on what it is we're already doing in the county to sort of prepare our food system and prepare our economy for, kind of the next 20 years. So even though it's fiction, it definitely has some elements of stuff that we should be concerned about and thinking about as we move forward. As well as the things we're doing well, know. I think of Windham County as kind of an innovation. It's sort of like the Silicon Valley for resilient living, meaning our regional food system. How do we welcome strangers who are moving here from a disrupted, Afghanistan or wherever? How do we think about end of life, death and dying? There's a lot of interesting stuff happening in this region. Death doulas, green burial, Manitou, and the Higher Ground Cemetery in Newfane. So there's all these things. So I'm trying to imagine how that plays out over the next decade. Interesting. Yeah, I'll look forward to reading it. I really will. So the one I think you and I originally got connected because you had done the book which addressed a lot of the. Well, I guess for the people who don't know who you are, you come from a fairly famous family. Yes. Well, my great-grandfather was the meatpacker Oscar Mayer. So I grew up, I was actually born in Madison, Wisconsin, which is sort of the home, although it hasn't been a family business since 1981. So I was very young. But, because of that, I'm what I would describe born on third base. I sort of won the lottery at birth in that way. But then in my 20s, made a decision to not receive an inheritance, to give away what I had. So that's sort of my curiosity background, but story. But that was 37 years ago. So, but what it's done is it gave me insights into inequality. About, for instance, the book I wrote about what I call the hidden wealth industry, the tax attorneys and accountants who help the ultra wealthy figure out how to hide their money, avoid taxes, pass it on, et cetera. So I'm interested in those issues of inequality, but also had a kind of a front row seat growing up to the benefits of concentrated wealth, if you will. Kind of like being in the playroom when they're drawing up the plays, right? I mean, you get to know how people are going to, in football, run their routes, and if you have that, then
you know how to head it off.
Yeah.
But I've said this over and over again. In a culture that allows a billionaire to happen, how do you fix that?
Well, I think you start off by understanding that there are harms when so much wealth flows to so few people.
Right.
That really matters to the rest of us in terms of the quality of our lives. And, not only has wealth kind of gushed up to not just the 1%, but mostly the 1/10 of 1%. People with $30 million or more are the ones who've really won. Well, at the same time, real wages have stayed flat for almost 40 years. Mm-hmm. So you have more and more people living in a kind of precarious, on the edge, not a cushion, without economic security. And then you have a small group of people with so much wealth that it's sort of distorting the rest of the society in harmful ways.
Yeah. So how, give us an example. Like how do we close that gap? How do we fix it? I mean, the answer is easy, but it weighs 20 tons and you can't pick it up.
That's a good point. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to imagine in our current political environment, certainly at the national level, being able to address this. But if you think about how do you reduce inequality? Well, you raise the floor. Mm-hmm. You can raise wages. You can help people become homeowners. You can, create opportunities for people who are non-wealthy to have a good life.
Right.
And in terms of the top end, I think, you have to look at how to tax high incomes and wealth and reinvest it in things that make for a good society. And we did that for 30, 40 years after World War II.
Yeah.
We taxed the rich. And, as one of our senators says, under the socialist presidency of Dwight Eisenhower, the wealthiest 1% paid, 90% of their income. Well, right. And that money actually went to create debt-free college and access to affordable home ownership. So we kind of know, as you say, the formula. Right. It's hard to imagine us being able to turn the dials anytime soon. But at a state and local level, there are some places where we can make a difference.
Right. I think you bring up a point right now with this polarized air that we're walking through right now. And it's just we're a headline reading, talking point regurgitating society. It's really hard to have this conversation to make people understand that if we did these proper things, even if we just asked the wealthy to pay their share, not more than their share, but just their share, we could close some of these gaps.
Absolutely. And the polarization you refer to is a reflection of inequality.
Yeah.
So you see, how is it that the ultra wealthy, I'm not talking about people with even $1 million. I'm talking about 30 million and up to the billionaire class. They're exercising their power.
Right.
And they're funding research and advocacy and communications and disinformation. And that's fueling that polarization. So part of the polarization is a result of these inequalities we're living with.
Yeah. I know that when we get into things, there's a documentary now that my wife started watching and has been talking to me. I have not seen it, but that has to do with the opioid and the Stacklers and how these people are really good examples of how this much wealth can just kill large portions of society. So this is we're playing with loaded guns here.
That's right. I mean, these extreme inequalities undermine everything we care about. Mm-hmm. Our health, our environment, the whole idea that non-wealthy people should be able to have an opportunity in a decent life. All of that is being kind of wrecked, I would say, by these concentrations of wealth and power. Even philanthropy, people say, oh, isn't that great? The billionaires are sharing some of their money. Philanthropy's become warped by concentrated wealth because the wealthy give differently than the rest of society.
Right. I used to explaining that there are two different places to go grocery shopping within Brattleboro, and I won't name either one, but I can tell you at one when we would do day-long food and fundraisers, we would get stuff. I'm not saying that we didn't, but when we did it at the other place, from the people who were maybe a little bit more hard up and a little bit, had a harder time making ends meet, those were the people that dug super deep, and we would nearly double every time. So, the folks without understand the best.
Yeah, we know that and that's true in charity generally. Low-income working people dig deep dig in a sacrificial way and usually don't get any tax benefit for what they're doing. They're just doing it because they know that's, and the ultra wealthy now more and more, it's all around the tax break.
Yeah.
And it's about creating a foundation or a donor advised fund. And then the money's sort of sequestered or warehoused. It's not really flowing to the charity groups that really need it. So that's a problem.
I don't know if you coined the term wealth hoarders or not, but so talk about that for a second, if you would.
Yeah, and this is really relevant. So yeah, the book I wrote is called The Wealth Hoarders: How Billionaires Spend Millions to Hide Trillions. And, we're talking about inequality, but in fact, inequality is actually worse than we think it is because trillions of dollars now has been kind of moved to the shadows. Tax attorneys, accountants, wealth managers, I call it the wealth defense industry. Their job is to move money to trusts, offshore, shell companies. Again, we're talking about the ultra wealthy, 30 million and up.
Right.
But there's trillions of dollars that has vanished to the shadows. And that's the wealth of the commons, if you will. That's the wealth of our communities that has been siphoned off. So if we really want to solve any of our big problems, we're going to have to redeploy that wealth. We're going to have to find it, tax it, bring it back to the community.
So what can we do in Brattleboro or Windham County? What do we do to help kind of close those gaps to get rid of the wealth hoarder?
Yeah, well, in some ways it's challenging because it's a national and global problem.
Yes.
So continuing to elect people to Congress who care about this and sort of get in there and duke it out with the rest of the country. At the local level, I mean, you and I both are very tuned into the housing issues.
Yep.
One consequence of this concentrated wealth is it's not like it disappears. It's actually here. It's in the form of shell companies and anonymous owners who are buying up and bidding up the cost of land and housing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So a big part of our housing crisis is a function of these inequalities. And fortunately in Vermont, we have the Vermont Housing Conservation Board. We tax real estate transfers and dedicate that money to both farmland conservation and permanently affordable housing. That is to celebrate that and support that is a really important part of the work locally. The Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust, I think, does great work. They could do even more, in terms of the impact on the local housing market. So continuing to support that. And, I support an idea of a kind of a mansion tax in the state. So a real estate transfer, let's say above $2 million, let's have an extra surcharge on that. And if you're not a Vermont resident, let's put an extra surcharge on that. And this is about capturing a portion of the wealth that's touching down in Vermont and disrupting our community and redirecting it to things that can make it a better region for everybody, not just the rich.
Right. So it's interesting, and there's a myriad of ways to solve it. We just sort of have to stay awake around it and support those that are supporting that. Like I think our senators and our congressmen that go to the inside the Beltway, congressperson, excuse me, who goes inside the Beltway is really tuned into that. Yeah.
They are tuned in, fortunately, and Senator Sanders and I have talked about the role of trusts. Again, this is not kind of an ordinary trust, but the trusts, we call them dynasty trusts. They're usually not, they're wealthy people moving money to South Dakota, Nevada, creating these trusts that are going to exist for centuries to take money out of Vermont or wherever it's coming from and hide it away. It can be fixed, but it needs people who are, like you say, awake and motivated.
Paying attention, doing something about it, getting involved. Chuck, I want to thank you for jumping on Vermontitude today. I know we've got a couple of books that we've talked about, The Wealth Hoarders, Born on Third Base, which is kind of your story, and now The Altar of an Erupting Sun. That's what it looks like. Pick up a copy today. Where can you get these? Can you get these locally?
You can. You can get them at everyone's books and anywhere else where books are sold locally.
All right, great. Chuck, thanks for jumping on the program.
Thanks, Pete.